Well, okay, so I'll kind of switch to talk a little bit about the ASEA technology. And so it is the only source that I know of um, on Earth where you can actually find balanced redox molecules for consumption. And so I was fascinated with this science, and all of this biochemistry evolved way underneath my radar as a practicing physician. But as I looked into this, it kind of made sense. And I was quite interested in trying it. And I have some sports injuries from my high school days and joints that hurt, and they'd been hurting for years, and they stopped hurting, and I could run. And it was remarkable. I mean, I've done a lot of things to help these sore joints, and I'd had some results, but I hadn't gotten deep enough in that physiological process to just activate that full potential. So yeah, these joints still have challenges, but they don't hurt, and they're not falling apart as I continue to be active and participating in backpacking trips and running and stuff like that.
I do know that you use these molecules in your practice, so I'm curious how you approach that in terms of, when you use them and the results that you've been getting.
Okay, so my work primarily is in the area of functional medicine. So my job is to look for clues as to what's going wrong in people's physiology, kind of deep in their physiology. People come to me knowing they're not well, but usually not yet having a disease. So they're out of balance in some way. So my job is to put on my thinking cap, do a few tests, and figure out where they're out of balance physiologically. Maybe there's some adrenal stress, hormonal imbalances, gut imbalance is a common thing. It's very common. And so as I try to pull these pieces together and restore balance by providing resources to the body, one of the key resources are these molecules. And not everybody is interested, okay, because it's kind of a different thing. But for those people who are, my work is made easy. They get better more easily with a shorter period of time. And that has a way of saving them financial resources. And so for those that have a mind for this sort of science and just kind of fascinated with what might be possible for their health, they'll take to this. And as they do, my work with other, nutrients, hormones, bioidentical things is much easier.
Are there any health conditions or challenges in particular that you would not use these molecules for?
No, because here's the way to think of this. These molecules are native to our body. We're not taking a supplement that comes from somewhere in nature. They're actually normally made inside our cells. So when we consume a balanced source of these molecules, our body goes, wow, there's me. There's some of me. There's more of me. I'm so happy to have these molecules back, and it knows what to do with them. So whatever stressor we're dealing with physiologically, when you get to the headwaters, so to speak, of where our body is operating physiologically, everything kind of downstream from redox chemistry will be enhanced. And the other beautiful thing is that as our body is seeking to work together, our different, our adrenal system and our pituitary and the structure of our body, the other functions, when the body's trying to kind of pull it all together and work in a synergistic way, when there's proper communication, everything works so much easier. So I've not yet found a condition that would be contraindicated. I know of no certain medication that would be not allowed to be taken in conjunction with something as basic as redox molecules. It is remarkably safe. I know of no adverse reactions. If it's something from nature, you could be allergic because it's a foreign substance. This is not foreign. It's native and it's unique. one of the ways that I have experienced this to know that it's a native supplement is the flavor. The flavor of this product varies from person to person, your experience. And so after you've been taking it a while, my experience is that the flavor becomes kind of bland, where in the beginning it might be more pungent, okay? So as it becomes more bland, it's an indication that my body is more in balance. So what's happened on occasion, I picked up a germ from grandkids or from somebody at the office, and when I get sick or ill and I have a fever, the flavor goes back to really strong. Now, the product didn't change, but my ability to perceive the difference between the balance in the product and my imbalance in my body is recognized by my olfactory cells in my brain and my nose. And so as soon as my fever breaks, the flavor goes back to bland again. That could only happen with a native health supplement. That would be impossible to come from some other kind of product. So that's kind of how you know it's just part of you. So the manufacturing process for this product is fascinating. It's basically made from very, very pure water and very, very, very pure salt. So that it's H2O and sodium chloride, NaCl. And so as these are combined, it is then passed through a process that breaks apart the molecules into individual atoms. So there's sodium atoms and chloride atoms and hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms that are floating around, and then they recombine into new configurations of molecules called redox molecules. So there might be 2 oxygens or 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens, things like that. And so what is interesting is that when we consume this product, it is stable. It's remarkable that it could even be stabilized. And when we consume it, it has a way of staying in balance long enough for it to reach the part of the body that needs the molecules. Now, they do that by creating a matrix, so to speak. And part of the matrix is the presence of a little bit of sodium. And so the amount of sodium is minute. In 4 ounces, there's about the same amount of sodium as you'd find in a slice of bread. So people that are on restricted sodium diets and things like that need not worry. They're not going to be drinking enough to matter. If your doctor allows you to have a piece of bread or 2 a day, you're good to go. So it's very tiny amounts, and it doesn't lead to any problems with our health at all. It's just there to keep it stable. So it has a long shelf life.
And I mean, it's amazing really how stable it is given how bioactive it is in the body. And we've been chatting about consumption. Are there other ways to apply the molecules?
Well, there is a product that you can put on your skin, and it has a little gel that allows it to be able to place the redox molecules on our skin. We absorb it that way as well. And it's remarkable how well our skin is a conveyor of redox molecules. Our skin is very hydrophilic. It loves water, doesn't love oil. And so it just soaks up the water, and the redox molecules that are have different names are very much like water, and it just soaks it up. And so the skin cells and the internal tissues will take advantage of those molecules because they'll reach sometimes great distances just from topical applications. So here's what happens when remember, this is a consumer health aid. We don't really dose it, and it doesn't require a specific dosing necessarily. Many times people have an intuition about what to take, but it boils down to this. If your body is well hydrated, if you've got plenty of moisture in your body, then as you are given this new resource of balanced redox molecules, your body will then make some decisions. And it says, okay, to-do list, check 1, check 2, check 3. and it starts going through a checklist of things it wants to work on. And the repair process will begin. Your capacity to do repair work is determined by your nutritional status. It's determined by the age of your body, you know, how old you are. It's driven by how thirsty your body is for balance. And it's the opposite of the medical field. When I think of a conventional treatment for somebody with pneumonia, they're going to be if they're really sick, they need massive doses of medicine, right? Because they're super sick, they need massive doses. When people are deficient in health and they are lacking redox balance, their redox potential is very low. It doesn't take much of any amount of the ASEA product for them to feel a replenishment. It's kind of like the guy in the desert who just needs a little ounce of water and it's all of a sudden he's rejuvenated. Our cells will really make use of these products, and our bodies are wise. It knows where to use them. So I like to tell people to begin with 2 or 4 ounces twice a day. Drink a lot of water to help with the cleansing process as you start to get well, and adjust up or down according to how you feel. If you're feeling a little toxic, then adjust down. If you're not feeling much change, you could adjust up a little bit until you start to notice shift. The shift is in your cellular repair. And so the symptoms of shift would be better sleep. Oh my gosh, we sleep like a baby when we have the right balance of redox potential for our brain cells that I talked about earlier. We notice that our digestion is easier. We notice that our recovery from exercise is much more efficient, and we don't get as sore. Our muscles just don't ache as much after a good hard workout. We'll notice that joints and aches and pains that we kind of all have if we've lived long enough and played hard enough are just not as tender and sore. And so we kind of can benchmark. Even mental clarity or focus is very quickly adjusted as your body starts to get the cobwebs out and detox and, you know, kind of clean up your thinking. And so those little benchmarks are helpful in recognizing your old, healthy, familiar self kind of coming back into play. And that's a challenge that we don't always recognize. And so as we share this with people, it's kind of fun to be sure and kind of benchmark where people are at, and it helps to recognize progress.
You did touch on in your presentation, no contraindications to medicines, etc. But with the audience we have online today, is there any suggestions for people teetering off their medications, being more observant as to what's happening physiologically to themselves when they're on medications, as well as taking the ASEA supplement, for example?
So here's what I recommend to people: is not to play doctor, and because it gets really complicated, right? And so when I have somebody who's working with an oncologist or a cardiologist or whatever, I'll tell them, look, when you see Dr. X, I want you to be sure and mention that you're doing a number of things to promote your health, and that you know the doctor is working very diligently on your disease. And so as you have a stronger health, you may want to remind your doctor that you're getting healthier, and you'd love to see if things haven't changed a bit. And so the doctor has certain biomarkers he might be following. It might be your LDL cholesterol level. It might be a SED rate. It might be something else. And so as your markers for the process of recovery from a disease condition improve, then the doctor will say, well, isn't that interesting? That's not supposed to happen. Maybe we should rethink this. And your next comment should be, well, maybe we can cut down on some of the treatment I'm getting so that my body can just move forward on its own. So it's a step. I think that we just, as we begin something new, like the ASEA product in your life, you want to keep as many variables fixed as possible at first. Don't change too many things at once. Just add one new thing, benchmark your progress, and then as you see markers improve and you just generally feel better, talk with your doc and suggest that you retest and consider less therapy. If your blood pressure's better, you may not need that medicine. And it's gonna be hard for the medical doctor to understand this because they're not used to it. They're not used to seeing people improve their health. They're used to just doing kind of disease maintenance. So you got to help the doctor along. And it's kind of what I suggest. We shouldn't just stop medicines. That can sometimes backfire. Do it with your doctor's advice.
Is on organ transplants, acceptance versus rejection with these molecules.
I've never encountered any problems when people are drinking the ASEA product and working closely with their doctor, regardless of what sort of therapeutics they might be engaged with. Drinking molecules that are native to your body are not going to interfere with any medical therapy. Medical therapies are designed to cause your body to do stuff, and there's no discussion. Your body's going to do what is being directed by a medical therapy. It's not up for conversation. But what you're doing with redox molecules is no different than what you're doing with eating food. Or drinking water. It's as basic as that. And so you don't have to worry about it like doing something crazy to your body. Your body will never do anything that is damaging or detrimental. Medications can, because it's a forced imposition on your physiology. And so that's why doctors are sometimes doing very dangerous things with patients. They monitor stuff and make sure you're not going to have a backfire or a side effect. But think of redox molecules as some of the most basic things in life for you. They're native to your body. You're normally making them. And for the same reason we need water, because we're 70% water, we need redox molecules because we don't always make them in abundance because we're out of whack or out of balance. And so just supplementing them isn't going to throw anything off. It's just part of who you are and what you need to operate with a positive or good redox potential.
The next question is regarding a patient with ringworm and ASEA, because it's mentioned that it's obviously a multicellular organism, which is extremely hard to shift naturally, so without chemicals or creams. So the question is, how long would it take in a situation such as this?
Well, that's a great question. It depends on the clinical situation. So a fungus is going to take over the skin for various reasons. And one of those reasons may be that there's not a balance of bacteria to compete with the presence of the fungus. So there's a deficiency of balance already present, perhaps. So if the conditions are right, we oftentimes see that these little molecules can assist in restoring the right kind of microbiota that live in and on our skin. Just as the same way the microbiota that live in our digestive tract is so critical, all right? And so the presence of the right balance is driven by our food intake. And what's interesting is that when our gut is okay, so is our airway, our mouth, and our skin. They all kind of share the similar germs environment. So you got to take care of the whole picture. It's not just a focused therapy. Many times we think allopathically. You have high blood pressure. Well, you need a high blood pressure pill. That's an allopath approach. But when I think of skin conditions, it isn't just like, well, you need to do this then. It's like, well, what led to that skin condition? What's wrong with the balance of things? And maybe that's where we should work first, and then maybe create some symptomatic improvement. The application of ASEA topically is absolutely soothing and restorative to the skin. It feels so good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the heart of the matter, at the root of that fungal infection, a yeast or whatever it might be, then you may want to go a little deeper and look for what led to that. And then you get a real result. long answer to a short question. Sorry.
We have a question that's come in terms of success for you treating potentially patients with Alzheimer's, particularly YOD. So I know we're naming conditions as such, but what's been your experience with ASEA with these molecules and Alzheimer's disease?
Well, I need to be careful not to really refer to a specific disease in conjunction with the ASEA product, because it's making a claim that is really not fair. All right, but if you think about cognitive decline, okay, of whatever kind. So we have people today, we have kids that are not able to focus in school and their cognition is impaired. We have adults that are so stressed out and are so sleep deprived that they're falling asleep at the wheel or cannot think and remember nouns at work. And then we have people who are older who are experiencing cognitive decline at a alarming young age, really, that is not reversible. Okay, so cognitive decline is essentially brain cells that are not able to produce the right neurotransmitters to send a message to the next nerve cell. So it's a failure to communicate. All right, and that can happen because of a list of problems that are wrong in the body. But I will tell you that at the heart of the matter of communication in our nervous system, as was in my presentation earlier, is the very production of neurotransmitter chemicals and the transmission and recycling of those chemicals. All of that is driven foundationally by redox chemistry. It's at the core of every thought we have. And so providing a resource and balance is critical. Yes, these molecules can travel right across our blood-brain barrier, but so can toxins that come from those cytokines in our gut. So we got to be careful. It's not about just this for that. It's a more of a, we have to look at ourselves as a system. And oftentimes, some of the first places I witness people to experience a benefit from drinking ASEA is in their cognitive changes. They notice their mood is better. They notice they're thinking, their anxiety is less. And this can happen within seconds of consuming just an ounce of ASEA. They just notice that they're thinking better. And I've even witnessed that from people applying the topical product, the Renew product, to their face. Where does the drainage, the veins and lymph ducts from our face goes directly to our brain. That's why an infection in your sinuses can really be damaging to your brain if you're not careful. So anyway, cognition is greatly impacted by redox chemistry. And when we have a balance in our redox potential, we really help in the production and the recycling of our neurotransmitters, the very chemicals we think with.
This next one I'll just read word for word. If the cellular redox potential is basically the body's ability to deal with stress, oxidation, and antioxidants, can we create disease inadvertently by making lazy cells without enough hermetic stressors by supplementing prophylactically?
Great question. And that required a good deal of thought. Can you create a weakened state, or is there a feedback loop that exists where if we're providing these redox molecules, our body's not going to generate them on their own, right? So the answer is impossible. And the reason why is this: our body will never, ever be influenced through the presence of some external source of redox molecule supplementation. The reason is because of where they come from. These molecules are made in the mitochondria, and they're created in the mitochondria in some cells, 1 million redox molecules a second. 1 million molecules a second in some cells. And then they get used immediately 1 million times a second. It is such turnover, all right? Well, how does this happen? It has to do with our mitochondria. So if we ever were to stop creating energy, we would die. So we're never going to stop making redox molecules because they're simply a product of creating ATP. Are we ever going to stop making ATP? Never. So just because you're drinking plenty of ASEA and have this wonderful redox potential doesn't mean you're not going to be creating an abundance of your own. Well, what if you get too many in your body? What happens? They get reconverted back into good old saline, and our body's loaded with saline. So you don't have to worry about overconsumption, and you might worry about underconsumption if you really need these molecules. And my experience has been people have an intuition about this, and they're drawn to these little molecules. So are animals. Animals are not afraid to drink this. They love it, and they know it's kind of an instinct that it's good.
We've definitely had that experience at our place.
You can't get lazy production of redox chemistry through a negative feedback loop. Doesn't exist. So we're good.
Perfect. The next question is about oxidative stress typically leading to chronic illnesses. And they'd like to know, are there any long or short-term studies that have been done with primary or secondary outcomes?
There are thousands of those studies. I would refer you to my website. I've annotated several of those. If you just go to the section that talks about oxidative stress, there's several articles that are referenced. And in my video conference series, there's several that are referenced talking just specifically about oxidative stress. It's been a hot topic for at least 10 years, at least, maybe more like 15. And it's been studied in a variety of environments, from animals to plants, backwards and forwards. And the outcomes are astonishing when you analyze the impact of oxidative stress and the detrimental effect it has on physiological outcomes. So when we can promote a better redox potential, and in most of the studies, it's all about like antioxidant function, right? And when we have the presence of antioxidants taking care of our cells, the question is, what's going to cause the nucleus to produce more antioxidants? It's all driven by transcription factor and this coding of genes and replication. All of that is upregulated by the presence of a balanced resource of redox molecules. So if somehow we can preserve that in our cells, then we preserve our ability to protect and detox. And that is integral in preventing cancer. It's integral in preventing premature aging and breakdown in our physiology.
So the last one is regarding homeostasis and young healthy people taking ASEA prophylactically. Will taking it reduce their own endogenous production of these redox molecules?
The answer is emphatically no. And frankly, I, for the last 10 years, have considered myself to be pretty healthy. And, I thought I was pretty healthy before I started ever consuming these things, these little molecules. Here's the thing. If we choose to consume these as young adults, we get to choose. And what we're choosing is whether or not we want to maintain a vibrant balance or take our chances with our world today, which is not a safe place. Here's a great example. Why is it that the #1 prescription drug in most all industrialized countries like America is a thyroid supplement, Synthroid, levothyroxine, whatever it is? Why is that? 40 years ago, when I began my practice, it was not. It was number 50 or 60. It's way down the list. What's happened? We don't have more Graves' disease. We don't have more Hashimoto's disease. We've simply got thyroids that are quitting. Why are they quitting? We don't have enough iodine. It's not getting in. And the reason it's not getting in is because our world is polluted with chlorine, bromine, and fluorine, which are on the same column of the periodic table of elements. We can't assimilate enough iodine to keep our thyroids healthy. We just can't. And so we can try to flood our bodies with iodine, but that is not even working very well. We don't have a safe world. It is just not safe physiologically in many ways. There's a list of reasons. It's not just toxins, but so what are you going to do? Well, you could follow your mother's advice and say, well, get your rest, eat a balanced diet, exercise, and do things that are going to bring you joy and peace in life. But that isn't good enough for today's day. So I just ask people, what are they doing? What 21st century technology are you applying to your life today to promote your health? Because if you're not doing it, nobody else will. And so my response to that question is, well, I'm drinking these little redox molecules every day, and I'm doing my very best to provide this balanced resource of native redox molecules that are working at the core of my physiology. And that's my best bet. I take a number of supplements and nutrients, of course, but at the heart of the matter is this upstream, very critical physiological resource that we don't have, that we really benefit from having resources at. And it's here, it's available, and it makes a huge difference. So we're not going to hurt ourselves in drinking this as a preventive measure. In fact, it's just what your body asks for. It's as basic as water. In fact, it's safer than water because it doesn't have any impurities. Most of the water we have has a little bit of arsenic, a little bit of mercury. It's really hard to get all of it out, even with the best filtration system. So ASEA has none of that. It's clean. So there you go.